Okay, we are recording now. Hello. And we are starting recording, although we were like mid laugh talking about other things off the air. So, welcome to our conversation already in progress. We are Thoughts on Talks, and I am here with Reverend Mike McMorrow of the Centers for Spiritual Living in Granada Hills, and our friend Salam, who joins us every other episode as we continue the conversation to explore the Black Lives Matter movement and how we can move forward from that moment of the movement to
Yes,
make it just life,
And
really.
absolutely.
you are
Oh, and I
Mo.
am Milena Dawn. Hello. So,
What's that flower you have on? Oh, sorry,
that's
dating
Delta
myself
Dawn.
again.
So, why do you want to start with the Twitter post that you shared with us this morning, Salam? You texted both of us.
Wait, no,
Yeah,
wait.
You don't
go
want to
Before
ahead.
start
we get
there?
into that,
Okay.
only because
Yeah,
basketball is such a huge part of Salam's story,
of
we have
course,
to acknowledge that
of course. Congratulations to the
the king
Lakers,
got
by
a
the way.
ring.
Yeah, yes, for they did it for the Mamba, so that was good. So for first to get that out there. Secondly, with the NBA leading the charge in social justice, and for them to get to be the blackest of sports, to get the whitest of sports to follow suit on that same train of thought, I felt was remarkable. It shows the level of progression that's in their activity and the progressiveness in their thought process and
Mhm.
bringing it about. And the NFL has improved. It's not perfect, but it has made some improvements to what they were 4 years ago. But what did those groundswell of movements of high profile, high visible, athletes, what did that do for society at large? Well, it started creating the conversation. And the conversations may take place in terms of roundtables or fireside chats, kind of like what we're having here. You see various talk shows of various, political persuasions, and the guests are selected, to pass off a certain narrative to kind of trick folks. Um, and then there are also in comedy, as you mentioned earlier, Milena, that there's a saying that behind every bit of humor is a bit of truth.
Yes.
And a lot of ways, humor is basically the candy coated shell to some nasty cod liver oil that surrounds, and it makes taking that cod liver oil. I'm dating myself. That's what my mom used to give me when I was a kid. I couldn't stand it, but she gave it to me, and once you take that medicine and it goes down, but it starts to work on you a little bit. Well, let's look at comedy and Bill Burr, the video was shared with me by one of my friends from high school, and he hit a lot of points. But usually, what I do, because a lot of times our social circles and our friends list are echo chambers, and someone like me, I wanted to get out of the amen corner a little bit and see what folks are really thinking. And the comment section in general, of not just that particular thread, but many of these the threads of dealing with volatile issues are the mercury level of where we are as a society. And when I read through the comments, it was some folks I just couldn't. I wouldn't say I couldn't believe, but I don't mean that literally. But I'm saying that
Right.
conversationally, that the level of victimization that was being feigned, at the facts that he was pretty much dropping,
Yeah.
and one particular instance he mentioned about white women basically co-opting the woke movement,
Right. Which I
and
I hadn't heard
Yes.
about that happening with the woke movement, but I know you and I have
Hmm.
talked about that
Yes.
that happened with the abolitionist movement
Absolutely.
and
It
suffragist
happened,
movements.
abolitions and the suffrage movement, but and affirmative action. It
Mhm.
has happened. With that, and
So give us
I
a little
thought
history on the woke movement. I mean, Bill Burr
I
mentions it.
think I think where he was going from is this. I'll pivot off of it just so we kind of see the commonality, but I'll name an actress, Alyssa Milano. Let's take her for instance.
Okay.
With her and I about the same age. I've watched her since I was a kid. Who's the boss? That kind of thing. But um, she's like socially conscious.
Hmm.
And I noticed that she was one of the very few white women early on who were talking about me too, me too, me too, me too. But
Okay.
I thought that it was calling. I didn't even know, but with the level of veracity that she was quoting me to, I didn't find out till after that fact that Me Too, I forget the black woman's name. It was started by her. As her
Yeah.
name always skips my mind. I apologize to her
Yeah, I'm
if
gonna
she
look it up
ever
too. I
forget this.
get her mixed up
Yes,
with somebody else too. I'm looking her
yes,
up.
yes. So I'll let you get that name there. But
Okay. Let's
that's
see.
like I'll let
Tarana
you. That's her name. That's her
Tarana
name. And a friend of mine had told me that like basically she just hooked herself up for a job, but I'll leave that alone. But these types of crises and movements do create opportunities, and they create opportunities for special interests and fringe groups to jockey for position to see what they can get the most of. Nothing really wrong with that at all. I mean, I'm saying that on a surface level, but when you start going deeper dive, then you start really seeing like how the inner workings happen. Um,
Hmm.
I give an example what I mean by that. When I pulled in the Smart and Final earlier this week, I mentioned this on a live that I did the other day, and I posted the picture, but I'll say it for the audience in case you didn't see it. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw, I'm not going to butcher the linguistic name of it, but basically it had a hashtag, and however you say Armenia in Armenian, that's what it
Mm.
was.
Okay.
They had the flag, and at the bottom it had an AK. And I said, that's interesting because I've seen Armenian human family block off Wilshire Boulevard from the Grand Wilshire Hotel damn near to Ocean Boulevard, to march about the commemoration of the Ottoman Empire slaughtering their relatives. And I don't blame them not one bit. But I had to educate myself to find out because none of their plight is being reported on the news here, really. I
Mm.
would have it on CNN, while I'm working ad nauseum, and not one solitary word has been said about them. So I did a little research, and they in their plight, there basically is a war going on. I put that in a nutshell, and I'm still unclear on the geopolitical um, standings between the two warring factions or multiple
Hmm.
warring factions. But suffice it to say, that hashtag that I saw in that car window with the car flags, they had an AK, and I thought, when Ice Cube rapped with Yo Yo, "My freedom has an AK," Bonnie and Clyde equal homicide. Now Ice Cube become, I'll just say it, the nigga you love to hate. That's the way he calls himself, right?
Okay.
So I look at how you have a black hip hop artist who raps about an AK, and here you have this um, hashtag, slogan with the AK-47 underneath that symbolizes freedom.
Mm.
Nobody said anything out of some Armenian folks that I know, and
Mm.
things that they shared. Nobody said anything about taking knees. Nobody said anything about flowers, throwing rose petals. Nobody said anything about locking arms. They're taking it by the horns. At least that's their intention. Whether it's
Mhm.
successful or not, I don't know. But they know what the price of freedom is. And when I reported that on the video, that the live that I did, and I know that I have some folks who may come into play and may say, "Well, oh, you're advocating violence." I said, "No, all I did was just make an observation." And that's, kind of like how you're looking through your circulars that come in the mail. I said, "Oh, so and so got grapes on sale for, I don't know, £2 for $3." I just said, "Hey, they got freedom over on sale over there, and they're willing to buy it lock, stock, and barrel." So that's the
Right.
only thing I mentioned. But I say that to say, like, how the same principle is looked at through two different lenses depending on who's acting on the principle. But bringing
Right.
it back to Bill Burr,
Hmm.
the feigning of victimization, that was an outrage from what I read through the comments on Twitter. I mean, they were going after him. Oh, he's nothing but all of these red herrings and deflections from the actual truth. It makes it hard to have authentic conversation about, okay, is that true? Is
Right.
there any element of truth to that? If there's not, can you refute it with something historically? So I realize I've gone on, but I'll stop and just open the floor.
Well, I thought
Um,
it was interesting in real time to hear what the audience didn't really know what to do, right?
Hmm.
Because
they were
Yes.
quiet.
yeah,
I
because
mean, you heard the
kind of like
smattering of applause, but it was that nervous applause. I bet if we panned the audience, that somebody probably went like this or something,
yeah, he
or
was
like, yeah.
he was kind of going, but he wasn't really going after anyone, right? So
Hmm.
he was talking about. I thought the funniest. I actually thought it was funny. So he's going. So I show up. I haven't been to New York in a while, and I show up, and there's all the place is crowded with people. And I asked the doorman, what's going
Hmm.
on? He said, "Oh, it's Pride Week." And he's going, "Pride? What's pride? Pride for what?" He goes, gay pride." And
Hmm.
it's that thing. Wow, it's like all of a sudden, oh yeah, I saw the rainbows and I saw two
Hmm.
guys, right? And but then he says, so I forget how I think he said the blacks or whatever. I can't remember how he said it. But
He said, at
they
least
don't even
according
get
to
a
this
full month.
tweet,
They only get 28 days.
And they get
Their
30
ass
or
off,
31, right?
right? And they get all of June.
and
Anyway, I thought it was
then we had to go, like, the time of the year that we get that the sun goes down by 4 o'clock. I mean, it was humorous. It really was
yeah,
humorous, but there was facts couched in there. That
yeah,
and then this folks that I mean, really, like, here you have the original people on the planet Earth. Okay, they're relegated to a 28-day month, in the Gregorian calendar. I thought that
mhm,
was pretty, interesting, in itself. So it
yeah,
makes no mistake that you have uh, Napoleon blowing off the nose of the Sphinx. And then at the bottom of the Sphinx, you have Abu El Hab, which means father of everything.
mm,
That's on the bottom of the Sphinx. So
mm,
it kind of like, if someone wasn't well versed in history or doing their homework, then they would think that, hey, maybe Black history didn't only started with slavery. And when
yeah,
I came up, that's the first time I've seen any discussion about Black people was in slavery. It wasn't until a couple of years after my first school lesson heard about Crispus Attucks, right? So, but I didn't hear about Denmark Vesey's or the Gabriel Prossers, any
mhm,
of that. Yeah, and the saying goes, to the victor goes the spoils, and and there you have it. It's an African proverb. I'm gonna try to attempt to say it, but they said that the lion doesn't get the chance to tell their side of the story because the tale of the hunt is told, through the voice of the hunter, or something
Mhm.
along that side of thing. And it's interesting that how the lion doesn't get a chance to tell the side of the story, and that pretty much is the body of the Sphinx. You had this head that had black features, but it had this body of a lion.
Mm.
So and we never truly got to tell our side of the story. And I mentioned this earlier in our talk several weeks ago, that we have the intersectionality when it comes into play. And as Black people have the right of way to cross that intersection. So what
Mm.
happens is you have LGBT that's crossing this way. You may have the feminists that are crossing this way. And now, if you've been to Santa Monica or Beverly Hills, now you have the diagonal crosswalks. So now you have those special interest groups crossing like that in front of you, and
Mhm.
no one is giving right of way. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So when you don't give right of way at a four-way intersection, or at eight if you count the diagonals, there's an accident that's bound to happen. And so when that collision happens, we're ill-equipped to take on, the brunt of the
Well,
impact of that collision.
I
So
think it.
that's where you have it.
I think it's also the uproar around Burr's um, bid.
Hmm.
I think it's a um, kind of a demonstration of how of the coalition itself that
Hmm.
has been so difficult to keep together
Yeah.
because none of these groups alone would have been able to affect real change. And I'm talking about kind of, let's call it a progressive agenda, which has made its way through the Democratic Party. Now,
Sure.
it could have made its way through the Republican Party, but
Absolutely.
they couldn't hang with it
Yes.
because for the longest time, African Americans were aligned with the Republican Party.
They were. Even after the Civil War, during Reconstruction,
Right.
when you had Black congressmen, take office, and one name that repeatedly comes to my mind is Hiram Revels. These were all Republicans,
Right.
who took office during that time, and that was only a 12-year period before Jim Crow turned that on its head. The Great Compromise turned that on its head.
Jim
Mhm.
Crow, which was implemented by Democrats, the
Yeah,
Democrat
absolutely,
affiliate.
absolutely.
So,
Dixiecrats.
yes. So, anyway, I just, if I just kind of feel like, and maybe I'm showing uh, my privilege here, but it seems to me like we need to lighten up and to be able to just, like you were saying, the part of what makes it funny is the truth that's buried in it.
Hmm.
And
Right.
it's not even a subtle truth. I mean, it's like pretty obvious.
It's
And
very,
he did
very
a
obvious.
really kind of a good job about kind of irritating every group possible. He got gay people, he got women, he got
Hmm.
Black people. He insulted white men at some point, I'm sure. Um,
Well,
Yes.
he also had a joke where he invited white women here, have a seat next to me.
He absolutely take your talking to.
That was
I
like
mean,
his last.
I mean,
right,
and
right.
frankly, I mean, he called them bitches. Like right in front of them, and
Well, the
the
way he said it
one
was like, my girls kind of
my
thing,
like,
my
but yeah,
bitches.
yeah,
Yeah, it was.
exactly. That's why he said it. You
Straddle the
know,
Uh-huh.
in your
Of,
Gucci belt.
of course, and he said that he talked about the very unspoken aspect of interracial sexual relations between white women and Black men. That's the most polarizing and yet imbalance from a hierarchical standpoint, a relationship
Mhm.
that you can have, because he mentioned that the sex only becomes consensual when she's caught. That is what he said. And when he said that line, I thought about the movie from the mid 70s, Mandingo, with the
Mm.
boxer Ken Norton in there, and the mistress, the wife of the slave master whom he served under. The actress name was Susan George, and
Hmm.
that I'll say is racy, but you can find it on YouTube. So, for those of you who want to watch, but it's raw, it's to the point, but it's really highlighted the horrors of slavery and how you can
Mm.
see how that institution is the bedrock of what we're still seeing today.
Right.
Wow. Well, and comedy and horror
Hmm.
and raciness, all of these kind of fringe communications
Absolutely.
are how we can get messages across and how we can share experiences. I've been talking about the TV show Lovecraft Country, which
Hmm.
it's a horror series. It is made by Jordan Peele and J.J. Abrams, and
Yes.
so it's a partnership between a black artist and a white artist, Jewish white artist, I'm assuming from his last name,
Yes.
and very popular, both of them as creators, filmmakers. And it's told from the perspective of a black family in the 1950s. And
Yes.
then there's the supernatural element.
And they were
So
on 47th Street in
episode,
Chicago, which I knew.
yes.
Yes.
And actually, I think it's episode 7. One of the
Hmm.
characters, her best friend was Emmett Till. And the episode starts with his funeral. I'm getting chills thinking about it. And the crowds in the south
Yes.
side of Chicago
Hmm.
waiting to pay tribute and, give their condolences to the family.
Yes.
And in that same episode, I think was one of the most, episodes 6 and 7 are pretty gory and horrific in that
Hmm.
kind of horror genre. And then you
Yes.
have this juxtaposition of like, one of the episodes is actually called I Am. And
Hmm.
in this storyline, a character goes kind of into another dimension where she has to claim her name, decide what her name is, and claim what she wants to experience it. And so she goes back in
Hmm.
time in different places. And it's very spiritual. And
Yes.
then in that same episode, like I'm all like feeling enlightened and thinking it's so
Hmm.
beautiful. And the same episode, it's like smash horror. And part of the horror is what Black people had to live
Had
through in
to
that
live
time
through. Yes.
specifically, but um anytime, So I recommend it, but watch with caution if you are not a horror or gore fan. I typically try to avoid it, but I'm finding the storylines and the characters so compelling. I
And
just
captivating.
sit
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I just sit
Yeah.
there wincing through the gory part, um, and the hardcore parts, because there are some really beautiful things, but it has so much history content, and
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I graduated
yeah.
elementary school one of Emmett Till's cousins, actually. And
Oh
I
wow.
didn't even know it until he said this to me recently, and basically tied the names together and their families
Mm-hmm.
together and things like that. I was like, whoa, I didn't know you were related. But sure enough, they were. And yeah, so it's a small world. Wasn't that long ago? We're talking a matter of what, 65 years. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not that long ago at all.
That was
Yeah, and
Hmm.
in that storyline too, there was a white woman who her power is in this supernatural,
Hmm.
and symbolically, she experiences the exact ways that Emmett Till, his life was ended.
Hmm.
She she voluntarily experienced it for the purpose of that storyline, which they never pointed out. They just kind of left it there. And I thought it was a really interesting storytelling choice. And I haven't seen the next episode to see if they tie it in together. But the arts are a way that we can communicate these difficult, challenging ideas and have a space to explore them without saying, you know, you, Salam, have to represent all Black people, and I have to represent all women, and Reverend Mike is responsible for anything any white person ever did, and let's fix it now. Yeah, like we can't, we don't represent everybody.
Absolutely.
I don't even represent all half Sri Lankan people, you know, or half Sri Lankan Americans. Like there's not that many of us, but you know, we're all individuals trying to make our way through this crazy world that's filled with all of this history and all of this mystery.
And more it gets uncovered, it seems, as time goes on. I mean, like the exquisiteness of research now, and you know, tying those firsthand and secondhand accounts and things like that. So like even myself, I find out something new all the time. You know, all the time. It's something that comes like, damn, that happened. You know, damn, really? You know, so I mean, and none of that we were taught in school. You know,
no. You know, another strange source for these stories that I've never heard of before is a show on Comedy Central, back to comedy, called Drunk History. Drunk History.
I heard of that. I need to check that out.
I saw an episode recently where it was about Eartha Kitt and how she was asked to come to the White House, and she stood up and said, "What are we going to do about this situation?" She was helping Black school children get like extra education, and because she talked over, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt, and went straight to her husband and said, "President, what are you doing?" And then she got up and addressed all the women. She kind of took over that luncheon at the White House.
Yeah.
Eleanor Roosevelt was like, I'm going to destroy this woman. And Eartha Kitt had to leave the country for quite a while before she could come back. I had no idea that ever happened. And here's Drunk History telling it through there's a comedian. They get the comedian sauced up and then have her try to tell this story with some sort of degree of consistency. So they get silly and they spill and they make noises. And then the actors incorporate the silly, stupid things that the comedians say as they're acting out the roles. So they have somebody playing, Eartha Kitt and just mouthing the lines of the drunk person. So
and that explains why Eartha Kitt was replaced, I believe, on Batman with Lee Merriweather. I believe. So first you had Julie Newmar, then Eartha Kitt, then Lee Merriweather came on as the new Catwoman. So
right on the Batman.
So it couldn't have been Eleanor Roosevelt.
No,
it would have been somebody else. Could it have been Jackie Kennedy or Mrs.
No. Let me look it up.
Let's see who that was. It could have been. Was it Lady Bird? Lyndon's
might have
wife.
Been Lady Bird.
Right.
Yeah, because Eleanor was a little bit more.
That actually makes more sense.
Yeah, because FDR was already dead.
Yeah, it was Lady Bird.
In 45.
It was Lady Bird Johnson. Yeah.
Now, notice I didn't know how to put all that together till you started talking about Catwoman.
Actually, I think Catwoman might have been Eartha Kitt's comeback, or was the timeline wrong there? She did have a comeback.
She was one of the iterations.
Catwoman, yeah. Julie Newmar, I think, was first. Yeah. And then Eartha Kitt was second. Then Lee Merriweather was the final one.
Okay. I remember even as a kid thinking, I don't know what's going on here, but Catwoman is like kind of
racy.
I don't know what the word is, but it's making me feel funny inside.
So you see, we are advocating for comedy that insults people, horror films, and campy,
Natural biological urges.
right? And
Classic
Batman
Batman.
and drunk history, which that doesn't mean I think everybody should go get drunk, but if you're going to, maybe you should learn history and share it while you're drunk. That would
We
definitely
welcome all who practice their beliefs in faith and love.
exactly.
Oh,
So
you
I
had your
mean,
bowl of Captain Crunch, right?
that's right. I love that, Salam. Caption crunch.
That's when you have to eat your words.
There you go.
Oh, very good.
Part is
Wow.
complete breakfast.
Never pass up a good pun.
Wow. So what else is going on? We've covered a lot already.
Yeah, we covered the comedy skit. We covered what was happening, in Armenia. The election is right around the corner,
That's kind of
and I'm seeing a lot of little football terms, flea flickers and misdirections that are happening, where you have the hand-picked blackface that's speaking on behalf of Trump, and that's
right.
and being paid boatloads of money to go after the Maxine Waters, the Kamala Harris's, things like that, to kind of like turn the tide a little bit. And they're really starting to. That's the gamesmanship of politics, as I call it. And Tricks is for kids. That's the other cereal for the day. But
cereal.
You should get sponsorships for this show.
Absolutely.
Saturday morning cartoons.
There you go.
Yeah, so there's a lot of misdirection going on, and somehow,
you see a lot.
When this is all over, we're going to need to be able to govern the country. So, regardless of who wins, I am. I have to say, I am I don't know if I'm a progressive, but I'm certainly left of center. The one thing that I appreciate about the Supreme Court nominee is, which is something that I appreciate about Catholicism generally, is that there's a very strong ethical construct within that faith system.
Yeah.
And so she seems very smart, and I think, and the other thing about within the Catholic tradition, if it's possible, and I don't know if it is, but if it's possible to unhitch the pro-life agenda, which has kind of hijacked things, I think, within that system, there's a very strong commitment to social justice. And before abortion, Catholics and Jews and Black Americans, I mean, that was a solid allied bloc. And so, and do I think it's right that it's being jammed through and all that? No, I don't agree with all that. And that, so there'll be remedies around that. But I think at some point, as people of faith, all right, it always comes back to what's being revealed is being revealed to be healed. And so each one of us within our own hearts and within our own conscience has to do our own work. And that work begins with voting, right? So when I think about some of these really divisive issues, it would mean something entirely different if the outcomes were because 80% of the people made it to the polls and voted. where we knew, okay, so we do have a clear majority of people who hold this view on this particular issue.
Right.
And
And fairly educated votes, like they've done their research. They've, gone beyond the propaganda ads that are seen everywhere and actually looked into the behind the scenes of what
well,
could happen.
well, and I
And yeah,
think
and that's what's
the other,
troubling. Well, not troubling, but it's concerning to me because, like, you hear if everything from radio, from campaign ads, commercials, bumpers, show bumpers, or halftime shows, saying, "Make sure that you get out and vote. Get out and vote. If you don't like what you're seeing, get out and vote." But getting out and vote doesn't necessarily guarantee that the folks who haven't voted are gonna vote for a change that in the same fashion that you see it. And I'll give an example. I talked about this on my live that I did a few days ago. There were two people, high-profile people I heard on the radio who will be voting for the very first time this election. Mike Tyson and Shaquille O'Neal. And when I heard Shaquille O'Neal's take on one Inside NBA segment, when it was the same night, the night of the Breonna Taylor decision by the Attorney General of Kentucky, when he decided not to pursue charges. And when I heard Shaq say that, well, the officers had a job to do, but it didn't take into account that the warrant that they had was flawed and things like that. I'm not going to relitigate the whole thing, but there was so many variables that weren't taken into account in his statement that, okay, someone like him, this is Shaq, it just happened to be a high profile, like bigger, larger than life figure. But there are many other people who maybe haven't voted, who probably see things in the same way Shaq does, and probably has the same perspective that Shaq does, given that Shaq is from military background and he moonlighted as a law enforcement officer. So he's deputized and everything. So his perspective is going to be skewed a bit, So these folks who are out there, they're not just folks who are just going around and just like not existing. These folks are procreating. These folks are having children. So they can easily disseminate and inculcate those values into their offspring. I mean, like, it just was something that I had to think about, and I want people out there to think about that even if you drag people to the polls, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll see things your way, especially to your point earlier, Melena, about them not being informed. Because I'm gonna be honest, full disclosure, in my earlier voting years, I wasn't fully 100% informed. Um, we were taught, like through behavior, in the Black community. Okay, um, I'm going to vote for Harold Washington. Harold Washington, late great Harold Washington, was the first Black mayor of Chicago. And okay, what does he stand for? No, I'm voting for him because he's Black. This is what we're taught to do because we've been beat down for so long that you're not even looking at the issues. You checking. He checks a box, and the biggest box is dermatological makeup. You see, and we turn around. So now the powers that be wise up to this. Say, oh, they're voting Black. So here, let me get my little puppet and let me stick a hand up his ass and have him, doing what I say to do, and he's gonna be the Pied Piper that's gonna lead the votes back my way. And
Yeah.
frankly, I just drop an example. This is what George Bush did to get his reelection in 2004. He just threw some bait out there, saying like anti same-sex marriage and abortion and things like that. He put those issues out there, and you had Black preachers who like fell all over themselves to jump on that bait, and he won the election. And I remember watching the electoral vote count, and I'm like, damn, how is he winning? But then the analysis after that showed that the issues that people were voting in on, I mean, like, were voted based on, okay, respectability
a very
politics.
narrow criteria.
A linear lens, it's very small in scope, right? So it doesn't necessarily like encompass the full breadth of the human experience or the full breadth of the human need, really. And wow, I mean, like, it just a U2 song just popped into my mind, where he said, "And I still haven't found what I'm looking for," and here we are still looking years and years and years later.
Human condition. Reverend Mike, you were going to give another point there.
Well, my point is I just want to come back to the point that we get more voices in the room, right? Because part of that is, and I was actually talking to my son about this today. We're talking about, from our perspective, the most effective reparations and what would it look like. And so, it's two white guys talking about it, but so we're just thinking about
Not
it.
Not the first time that happened, but go ahead.
Well, because you're going to, at the end of the day, you're going to have to convince the old white guys before you get anything done anyway, right?
Yeah.
So we were just talking about the importance of home ownership, trying to find a way to get people into a home, and also having access to education. And we kind of went round and round on that, because I don't think it's going to be helpful for anybody to get into, a multi-generational thing. But we were, so what we came up with on the educational front, because not everybody wants to go to school, right? So you can pay for someone to go to school, and then, they just, they don't, like myself, just didn't really do anything with it. But we got to thinking about this, and this ties in with the greater numbers. If the purpose of having people better educated, let's say through grade 14, right? So 2 years of college, is to create a more informed citizenry. This goes to your point, Salam, right? So there is a real advantage for us as a society to make a commitment to educate, everyone, but certainly starting with disenfranchised folks, for that very reason. So, for instance, I went back to school in my 30s, and in order to finish my lower division to get into CSUN, you had to take, it was in the philosophy department, but it was basically critical thinking.
Yes.
Right. And so it addressed things like you were talking about, Salam, like, how to sift through the barrage of bullshit. And so one of the assignments was to bring in a bunch of current events. And then we actually looked at the way things were languaged. Right. So, and this can be, like white youths versus black thugs, for instance. I don't know that I've ever seen anything that drastic, but just looking at the power of semantics, right, and the power of words, and how they shape opinion and things like that. So I just kind of feel like we have this unique opportunity, just to kind of bring it back to the NBA even, where they had Black Lives Matter on the court. You just weren't going to get away from it this year.
Right.
And they did a really great job of, handling the bubble and all of that. And LeBron addressing the issue while he's taking the trophy.
Yes.
And he's thanking Adam Silver, that boy is white as white can be.
He is, as the driven snow.
Right. But yet it didn't seem like anyone was uncomfortable with the fact that this was being used as a platform to remind people that there's something bigger than basketball, and something bigger than basketball at stake, not just now, but moving forward. So it's the one, ask me on November 10th what I think, but
Right.
the we live in a very interesting time, and of course I got a few years on you guys, and part of me is like really bummed out that we're still talking about all this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, to me, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, they're tragedies, but it's freaking heartbreaking that it's happening in 2020. I think that's
Right.
the part that, if I allow myself to think about it too much, it really takes me to a dark place.
I get you.
That well, we've talked about this before, but you think you've addressed things, and then and I think really it's the pursuit of power. Then it just kind of finds another avenue, whether it's the strong man candidate,
Yeah.
right, or the other diversions. So I think going forward, I'm hoping that we're all going to be a lot smarter for this experience, and I don't know what to do about this, but there's going to be, if the polls are correct and if they manage to pull off a Democratic victory,
Mm-hmm.
we have 42% of our electorate who appear to hate liberal democracy.
Yes.
Or are threatened by the multicultural composition of the other party.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, so Democrats are kind of used to working within this multicultural dynamic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to need to be a shift of consciousness that includes within that multicultural dynamic this other 42%,
Mm-hmm.
which you may not get all the 42 in there, but maybe you can get 22%.
Yeah, I'd like them to put aside and sideline the. I hate to sound like the get off my lawn kind of guy, where when I see Kamala's a bright woman. This is nothing against her, but um, I frankly don't want my elected officials to be doing her sorority step, like now to win votes. Show me where your heart is, but tell me what what you're going to do. And I don't mean to beat up on her. Trump is low hanging fruit. I mean, I'm not. I mean, who isn't, for the most part, most folks who we know, who isn't displeased with the job that he's doing? But I'm saying, instead of like them saying, okay, well, tell me what you're going to do. Well, Trump is doing this. Okay, so again, tell
Right.
me what you're going to do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And don't show me that you got hot sauce in your bag. It's pulling a Beyonce. Don't show me how you know how to march, a two-step, a crip walk, or things like that. Just tell me, give me some hardcore fundamental things and nuggets that we can chew on, that said that, okay, this is what we're going to do for you. About 40,
How do we
47.
move the ball forward?
And yeah, about 47 years ago, the Trilateral Commission, headed up by David Rockefeller, I think it was. His brother Nelson was, at the time, was the governor of New York State. But David Rockefeller had put together a Trilateral Commission, and they did a report on the crisis in democracy. It's an actual report that they did. I got some notes scribbled here somewhere. I'll get it to you later. But it was three individuals, and their name escapes me. But one did a case study, a copious case study on the United States, crisis of democracy. One did a
Okay.
copious case study on the UK crisis of democracy, and one did a copious case study on the crisis of democracy in Japan. And in three different societies, you have this same um, product that the United States, by hook or crook, was forcing onto the world. And like the late James Baldwin said, if you got a product that's so damn good, you ain't got to beat nobody over the head to take it. I mean, hell, they'll run to you to get it. So like folks aren't running to get democracy if it's not working. They're fleeing their homelands and things.
Mhm.
But I say all that to say that um, back then in 75, when that report was written 45 years ago, they saw a crisis in democracy, and here we are 45 years later, we still haven't solved the problems
Right.
that had taken root back then. And it just goes to show that it's an uphill climb. We just have to keep chugging away, but we still have to not be afraid to ask for something. So I noticed on the left side of the aisle, I noticed this in particular, that when you ask a question or ask for a demand, you're pretty much shushed out of the room. This has happened to me on social media, and I'm fine with that, because I'm a noodler, I'm a thinker, and where folks will say, well, no, you can't ask for that. No, you can't make demands on people. So I'm like, what is it? I mean, like, why are we treating us? You're telling us to allow them to treat us like they're giving us a Valentine's Day gift on February 15th. Kind of like how a dude who got his primary relationship at home, he making sure that his wife taken care of on February 14th, and then all the Valentine's Day stuff go on clearance on February 15th, and then he's showing up to his side piece and here, happy Valentine's Day, baby. And that's how they're treating us. I mean, it's almost like a side piece politics. You know what I mean? And like we're not we ask for nothing but expect something. And it's
Mm.
bewildering that we're in that place. You know what I mean? I mean, like go to rule of algebra, but you're doing one side, you're doing the other. You can't say ask for demands of Republicans that we're not willing to ask for of Democrats.
Right.
And that's that model of consistency that we have to do. And
Right.
because we don't have that model of consistency as a society, in order to be ethical, one of the prerequisites of having ethics or moral compass is consistency. And because
Mhm.
we're not consistent, and we're on society and politics and morals are for sale for chicken change, as James Brown said, here we are with this. This volatile state where
Yeah.
Right.
everybody's for sale. What meant something one day doesn't mean that the next day, and we don't have any kind of backbone. And hence the problem.
Right.
Well, and I think we need to remember that democracy is really an experiment.
It is.
And the United States is a grand experiment. So we keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking what is
Hmm.
going on. And the crisis in democracy from 1975 is just that, it's people.
Yeah.
Right.
People are crazy
Yeah.
everywhere
Well,
Hmm.
all the
once in a while, it lurches forward.
time. That's
Oh,
true.
for
Right.
those of you who are out there, I'm sorry. The three names I knew I had it written down. Is one of the I'm leaving the last names: Crozier, Huntington, and Watanuki. Watanuki
Hmm.
obviously did the case study for Japan. So yeah, put it that
Right.
way. Crozier, I think, was the United States, and Huntington did it for UK. So that's pretty much just the gist of it. And they even highlighted the decay of the party system. And we've been clamoring for that for how many election cycles since then?
Yeah.
So there's that. So, like I
Yeah.
said, I keep
It's
notes. So,
check you out. Yeah, so when we think of it as an experiment, I think it becomes less combative maybe, and allows us that space to say, well, here's what we need, and maybe take a scientific perspective. We can't work toward a conclusion without actually what all elements are in
Yes.
the
It froze a little bit.
We just want
You back?
to do some research.
Oh,
I'm
start
back.
again
I
from
see you guys.
scientific method. Start again from scientific method. That's where you were.
So you have to introduce all the elements so that you know what to use, what works, what doesn't work in the experiment, and then produce that conclusion that so is and believe it and claim it as, you know, a step-by-step process of figuring out how it will work in this material realm from idea to manifestation. So it's a spiritual process, it's a science process, and engage all of these parts of ourselves in all these areas of life. What is it? The nine areas that you had talked about?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, education, entertainment, and economics, labor law, politics, and religion, sex, and war. That was co-opted by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She's passed away, I think, a few years ago. I can't reach her book behind me, but I had her up here before. I don't want to separate a shoulder reaching, but she's the author of the ISIS papers. And so, for those of you who want some recreational reading, you can see a lot of what her written works was. I mean, a lot of folks who've written her off as a kook, but when you consider the source, these are old white men who rather not have shifts in paradigms, in the way of thinking, because they stand to the status quo is advantageous to them. So any threat to that intellectually and ideologically, they're going to reject it and write it off with a cast aspersions against it. So,
and I think that the trying to get the 42% who might, like you said, hate the other side, the liberals. It's about finding why they hate. I mean, part of the marketing and the propaganda of these political campaigns is trying to make that heart connection to kind of bypass the mind and go to the emotions. But we can use the same technique without being about it and find what is it that they're so afraid of? Why are they afraid of these things? And how can we reduce that fear and introduce opportunity or experimentation, possibilities, all of those things which liberals and progressives are drawn to.
Absolutely.
But conservatives are afraid of. And so I think that's also part of our work is not everybody has to think the same, but we don't want it to be a hate and shut out situation. So
absolutely.
making that connection.
I'm sorry. Here's with the camera. That's Dr. Frances Cress Welsing right there. So
okay.
May she rest in peace. I admire her work.
That's ISIS.
The ISIS papers,
Egyptian,
yes.
The Egyptian goddess, not the.
It's not the terrorists. Yeah, we're talking about the wife of Osiris. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Interesting. It's cool stuff. Well, I
see my Gumby arms had use.
We've given people lots to look into and think about, from entertainment to crisis in democracy papers and studies, and
There's a PDF you can download, people, and feel free to peruse it for yourselves.
There you go. So
All right.
thank you for for all you watching for joining us. Thank you, Salam and Reverend Mike, for this
You're
interesting
welcome. Thank you
discussion.
for having me.
And it's always an education and a pleasure. So join us again next time on Thoughts on Talks, and check us out at cslgh.org for all the other activities that go on at the Center for Spiritual Living in Granada Hills. That's all. We're out.
Take care, everyone.
Adios.